leading poet for the final session, is here as well. And I'm so very glad that she's here. She's been part of this event before on multiple occasions too. But we have always, I think, something new, something exciting to share about her. And this year too, we have an exciting piece of news that pertains to her that we will share. Of course, I will read out her biography and we will get to that. So Julia Caroline Knowlton is professor of French at Agnes Scott College in Atlanta and incoming president of the Georgia Poetry Society. Shall I repeat that? Incoming president of the Georgia Poetry Society really needs to be congratulated on that wonderful achievement. She has an MFA in poetry from Antioch University and a PhD in French literature from UNC Chapel Hill. The author of 4 books and an Academy of American Poets Prize winner, she was named Georgia Author of the Year for her 2018 chapbook, The Cafe of Unintelligible Desire, Alice Green and Company. If you haven't had a chance to pick it up yet, I think you should look it up and get a copy and read it. You will really enjoy it. Her second chapbook, poem At the Edge of the World, will also be published by Alice Green and Company. Julia regularly publishes in journals, including One Art, Roanoke Review, and Boston Literary Review. So we have excellent news from Julia, and I'm so glad that she's here to share her poems with us again this year. Welcome, Julia, and the digital stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm very grateful to be here. I know that Dr. Christine Cozzens read the poem Disbelief by Camila Aisha Moon this morning. I had also planned to read it, and I am going to read it again to honor the life of our colleague and friend. Many of us at Agnes Scott are still in a state of disbelief that she has passed away. But what I love about poetry, and I tell my students, is that the voice of a poet really is immortal. So I'm going to start with Disbelief by Camila Aisha Moon. I have all of these lily plants, but not you, nor peace. How they ease my breathing, yet trouble my mind. Symbols of your soaring too high to see or reach, beauty clanging like bells out of tune, time's up. Leaves so shiny and perfect, they look fake, but a few brown ones barely clinging and curled in on themselves, less supple, less everything, like me. Let me know they are real. They are real, too real. Lord knows you were the most real one can ever be, and now you are really gone. Your need is over, but your giving goes on and on. Heaven is shedding desire's heavy robes, pure devotion to love's bare essence. You, flowered and shiny in what's left of my heart, teaching me to rally. No matter how it may appear, I'm not rootless. Today and tomorrow and the day after that, you remain evergreen and ours, somewhere not here, as my tears land in potted soil, exiled from its mother, earth, like me. So the next poem I'm going to read to you is tied to my thoughts and feelings about Professor Moon. It's not about her, but this poem is called Moon, and it's in my new chapbook. The next 2 poems that I will read are from my new chapbook, and this poem is about the moon, and you'll see when I read it what's going on in this poem. So this is my poem called Moon. Enough already about it, a poetry professor once said. There is no room for the moon in poems anymore. The idea being it has all been done before. undeniably true. I tried the advice, writing about waves, ill fate, petals like bells, eyes and lies, secrets to confess, all other things that have fully been said. Then last night, early spring, getting late, trees black and still bare, you held me hard in your arms. We were one, lit by it, entirely unknown, full pearl button, huge sequin sewn in night's lace dress. So I think that we can keep writing about the moon, despite people telling us that we mustn't do that. I'm just going to read one more poem today. This is also from my chapbook, which will be published in 2022. The title of this poem is Amour, which is the French word for love, A-M-O-U-R, amour. Amour. I am a pebble tossed at the bottom of a well, flame to a moth, both fire and cold faith. I came here last and lost, my mind undressed, holding one stone wish in hand. I stay here still, one stone wish in hand, dusty song to dusty wing.
Thank you.
That's what I have for you today. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Julia. Again, thank you for sharing again the poem by Kamila Aisha Moon and your own poetry, of course. It's always very moving. Really, really appreciate your poems and your reading.
Thank you.
We will move on now to our next reader, Robert E. Wood, who's also read at multiple earlier iterations of this event. He teaches at Georgia Tech and received a PhD at the University of Virginia. His Some Necessary Questions of the Play is a study of Hamlet. His poetry has appeared in Southern Humanities Review, South Carolina Review, Quiddity, Blue Fifth Review, NDQ, Poets and Artists, and Prairie Schooner. His chapbooks, Gorizia Notebook, Sleight of Hand, and Arms for Oblivion were published by Finishing Line Press. The Awkward Poses of Others, Word Tech, was awarded Author of the Year in Poetry by the Georgia Writers Association. His work appears in the forthcoming anthology, Mother Mary Comes to Me. And I very warmly would like to welcome Robert Wood to come and take the digital stage and share his poems with us. Robert. Robert, are you there?
Unmute, I'm here.
Yes, good.
I unmuted.
Don't see your face though.
I could not get my camera working today.
Okay, okay.
So I'm going to be a bit in the, we see now, but in a glass darkly, I suppose. I'm reading some poems that were concerned with love poems to my wife, who passed away just after our last anniversary, before this anniversary. Sinatra sounds best in Italian restaurants, that sullen sorrow softening the air. I look at you across linguini, in which no mafioso will fall dead face down this evening. We will move elegantly into the night without even a cardboard box for the unfinished tiramisu. The night song. To speak to you of love, I would have to forget that the heart has been spoken of too often. I would have to remember listening to Mexican songs on the car radio at night, hearing only mi alma, mi corazon, growing faint on a stretch of highway between towns that no longer mattered. An ordinary heart song. Without you, my heart would disappear. Like a thumbtack left on a message board, holding nothing down. And the last, eating artichokes, a love poem trouvé. Whoever reaches the heart first wins. That's
Thank you very much.
it for today.
Thank you very much, Robert. Again, beautiful poems as always, and make one think and feel at the same time. Thank you for sharing those lovely poems. We move on to our next poet and participant, Sachada Parker. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. She's a junior at Agnes Scott College, where she's pursuing a dual degree in public health and nursing. She has been published in Love Your Rebellion, a literary magazine dedicated to empowering marginalized groups through the arts. She writes poetry on her personal website as a way to reflect on and ground the emotions that consume her body and mind. Her hobbies include park skating, visiting public parks in Atlanta, thrifting for vintage clothing, and Polaroid photography. Welcome, Sachada Parker. Please take the stage.
Hi. Okay. My name is
Hello.
Sachada. Hi, my name is Sachada, and thanks for having me as a participant. I'm going to read one original poem that I wrote after suffering a concussion last year due to a skating injury, which is a favorite hobby of mine when I get the chance to do so. So here it is, titled Concentration. Concentration. Small block letters, the pages reborn, coming alive. A newborn, learning to crawl, learning to walk, virginally processing cognitions, alphabets walk and tumble and dip and daisy over gray matter. Now a rainbow, they swoon and skip and form vocabulary, a few dream. Schedules inked, grass mained by body parts, and thrift store jeans, and Converse shoes, and to read again, someday, again. And that's the end of my poem.
Okay, but I thought you might read another one, but that's it. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your participation. And Sajeda, sorry for mispronouncing your name in the first instance. I said Sajada, so Sachada Parker. Yeah, wonderful
Yes,
that you were able
understand.
to participate. Thank you.
Thank you.
We move on to our next participant, and you will find that the participant, I would call that a split personality, has two different names. He has a pen name and he has an original name. So let me first of all introduce him with his original name. His original name is Murtaza Bharlas. He's the son of Murtaza Bharlas, who's a very famous poet in Pakistan, whose poem he will be reading, and in Urdu, who writes in Urdu, and then he would be also reading a translation of that poem that he has made himself. So let me give you a brief bio of Mr. Murtaza Bharlas. He's one of the defining poets of modern Urdu ghazal from Pakistan, and ghazal you might be familiar with now because it has been imported into the American poetic tradition as well. His work has been published in respected journals and magazines of Urdu literature since the early 60s. He had published several compilations of Urdu poetry. His primary poetic expression of choice is the ghazal. though he has penned some nazams, which are, lyric poems as well, as opposed to the ghazal, which is a very strict form. Nazam is a more open form. His writing style comprises strong expressions with a wholehearted commitment to the technical accuracy that has always been required of ghazal writers. His unique style of poetry has earned recognition from respected literary critics of Pakistan and India. Murtaza Bharlas is a retired civil servant. He resides in Rawalpindi and is an active patron of literary activities. That's the father whose poem he'll be reading, and then the translation of that. But Irtaza Bharlas, the son, is also known by the name of Razi, which is his pen name. And in that capacity, he will read, first of all, a poem by Emily Dickinson, and then his translation of that poem into Urdu. So he's translating it both ways. He's translating poetry from Urdu into English and English into Urdu. So Razi is the pen name of a poet who's originally from Pakistan, but now resides in Atlanta. He can be accessed by being, he can be accused of being a techie occasionally, but in essence, he is a dreamer who is too busy dreaming rather than creating something real, very much like poets, I suppose. These cross translations of poems, one from Urdu to English for Murtaza Bharlas and one from English to Urdu for Emily Dickinson, are perhaps the most real thing he has done in some time. So very welcome, Razi Irtaza Bharlas, to this session of ours, to the 100,000 Poets for Change. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, and certainly appreciate Dr. Khwaja for giving me the opportunity to join this group. So, and it was pretty intriguing. In my experience, even 5 poets are too many in a room, and we're talking about 100,000 poets in the room. That is pretty amazing, actually. It's pretty incredible in its own right. So I'll read the first my Murtaza Bharlas poem. It's called Ghamzada Ajnabi, Forlorn Stranger. And I've broken down into like some sections, and I'll read it in Urdu and translate it in English simultaneously, I guess. Ghamzada Ajnabi, tera mera taarruf purana nahi, hai mulaqat aapas mein kuch roz ki, aur wo bhi mulaqat hai sarsari. Ghamzada Ajnabi, tere gham ke sabab se main waqif nahi, aur khud tujhse gham ka sabab पूछना मेरी दानिस्त में कुछ मुनासिब नहीं. ऐसे गम भी हैं दुनिया में जिनके लिए गम गुसारी के अल्फाज काफी नहीं. O forlorn stranger, I don't know you, nor do I know your grief. And it does not seem polite for me to ask you about it. There are many sorrows for which there are no words to assuage. एक बेवक्त की आगही का है गम, कितने लोगों को दस्ते तही का है गम, कुछ को गैरों का गम, कुछ को अपनों का गम, जो अधूरे रहे ऐसे सपनों का गम, कुछ को माजी के करदा गुनाहों का गम, कुछ को फरदा की तारीक राहों का गम, अजनबियत का गम, कजदाई का गम, एक खिलाफे तवक्को जुदाई का गम. ऐसे गम भी हैं सब सीनों के अंदर छुपे, शिरकते गम न जिसमें कोई कर सके. There are many sorrows for which there are no words to assuage. There is grief of untimely knowledge. There are pains of poverty. There are sorrows of others and some of our own. There is anguish of broken dreams. There are guilts of the past sins committed. There are anxieties of the dark roads ahead. The sadness of alienation, the grief of unexpected separation. There are many hidden miseries. There are many unshared mysteries. क्या करें अजनबी अपने असलाफ झूठी अना के लिए नस्ल आदम में तफरीक करते रहे. अब गिरोहों में खल्क़े खुदा बढ़ गई. जात है, कौम है, मुल्क है, रंग है. एक आदम की औलाद में जंग है. एक भाई तायुश में मदहोश है. दूसरे भाई पर जिंदगी तंग है. एक भाई के सर से लहू है रवां. दूसरे भाई के हाथ में संग है. O stranger, what can we do? Our ancestors have been sowing divisions in the humankind for selfish reasons. The humanity is now divided among castes and nations, among countries and skin pigmentations. Children of a single man are at war. As one brother reels in luxury, the other wrestles with life. As one brother bleeds, the other holds the rock. ऐसे गम भी है चेहरों पे लिखे हुए जिनको हर शख्स अपना ही गम कह सके सारे फुरकत ज़दा एक ही आग में चल रहे हैं यहाँ कुश्तगाने सितम एक ही राह पर चल रहे हैं यहाँ सारे मजलूम लोगों का गम एक है सारी महकूम कौमों का गम एक है बदनसीबी का चेहरे पे रंग एक है मुख्तलिफ हैं महाज और जंग एक है Then there are those griefs that all can call their own. All the love-lorn walk the same path. All the wretched burn in the same fire. All the oppressed people have the same plight. All the enslaved nations face the same fight. The face of misfortune bears no colors. Different are the fronts, yet similar are the battles. गमज़दा अजनबी तू भी मेरी तरह अपने गम के शरारों से उठा अपने बोसीदा आंचल का परचम बना चल मेरे साथ चल जंग का एक मोर्चा तू भी संभाल हम अगर जिंदा इस जंग से बच गए अपने गम का अजाला भी हो जाएगा और अगर हमको जामे शहादत मिला जावेदा जिंदगी हमको मिल जाएगी गम जो भी है हमको निमट जाएगा और जब्र का ये निज़ामे कौन एक दिन जंग के बाद खुद ही उलट जाएगा O forlorn stranger, use the embers of your grief like me to kindle new flames. Use your ripped garment, and use it to fly your emblem. Come along with me and take up this fight on the battlefront. If we survive, no more will be our grief, and if we are martyred, it will be to an eternal life. Our grief will surely be gone. One day, this era of tyranny will be no more when the war is done. So that was my father's Murtaza Bharlas's poem. Second poem is by Emily Dickinson, and I found her recently, and I love her poetry. My English vocabulary is very low. So anyways, so if I should die and you should live and time should gurgle on, and morn should beam and noon should burn as it has usual done. If birds should build as early and bees as bustling go, one might depart at option from enterprise below. It is sweet to know that stocks will stand when we with daisies lie, that commerce will continue and trades as briskly fly. It makes the parting tranquil and keeps the soul serene, that gentlemen so sprightly conduct the pleasing scene. Now, is Urdu translation or Urdu interpretation of that poem. Gar main na rahun, tum zinda rehna, कहना समय से झरझर बहना, कहना सहर से रोशन निकले और दोपहर भी यूं ही पिघले, जब चिड़ियां तिनका तिनका जोड़ें, माखी भिन भिन गाएं, तो यूं भी हो सब धंधों से हम शायद रुखसत चाहें. इस सोच में भी तो लज्जत है कि काम और धंधा चलता हो, जब हम लेटे हों फूलों तले, बाजार हिस्स में रौनक हो. ये सोच के रूह रहती है निर्मल, होती है रुखसत भी आसान, के लेन देन मंडी में इसी फुर्ती से होते जाएंगे और सारे साहिब सुथरा सा एक अच्छा दिन निपटाएंगे. Thank you so much. That's all I have to contribute.
Wow, thank you very much, Murtaza, and it was lovely to hear Urdu poetry and Urdu translation recited so well. I think your translation of Emily Dickinson's poem in Urdu was really quite compelling, quite marvelous, and retained the lyricism so very well. Thank you for your participation. We move on now to our next participant, Teresa Mariano Thompson. She comes from Hawaii, she comes from Hawaiian, Azorean, West African, and unknown European ancestors. She graduated from Yale University with a BA in Women's Studies. A former educator, she currently lives in North Carolina doing freelance editing when she is not living in, and I hope she doesn't mind my sharing this bio note as this is what she sent me, when she's not living in the exile of psychosis within her own mind. Very welcome to this session, Teresa Mariano Thompson. I am glad that you are able to participate, and we await your poem.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed, very clearly.
Okay. I wanted to add that I when I signed up to participate, I thought I would be a listener, and I didn't realize until late yesterday that I would be a reader. And I used to, when I was very little, I dreamed that I would grow up to be a poet, and I wrote so many poems and songs. And when I was 14, my mother asked me to gather all of them. I had a stack that came up to my waist, and she asked me to gather all of them and to burn them because she did not believe in poetry, and she was worried that anything that I left behind would hurt the family. And so I know it has broken me very deeply, and I'm just recently lost my mother, and I'm grieving the loss of my mother. So the poem I wrote, I started late last night, and it's very, very rough, but have not written for so many years, and I'm just very grateful to you for letting me join you. So I apologize in advance. Oh my God. It's called Living in Exile. Forgive me, each day my words wash out further beyond the breakers, where I can see but no longer reach them bit by bit. It comes in waves, the forgetfulness, the sheet rubbing insomnia, pacing anxiety, fluttering, motorized heart, and the occasional riptide of a grief, pulling under if you don't know to swim sideways, paralleling the Pele Aa lava poly cliff rocks. In the overwhelming rain-cooled ocean of despair, wind knocked out and lungs sucked bare of all air. A short few blinks like sleep, and then it starts over again. Mom never spoke of her family, her homeland, not even her parents. They are my family, mine, not yours, she said. They were her taboo to bear. Until just before she died, pulling the secreted Ohana photos of their not familiar faces, seated above children on the floor, long, bare brown legs, barefoot, American citizens not having any shoes at all until late high school. She said they did not notice running in the pineapple fields because their classmates had no shoes too. When her mother's mother died in childbirth after 22 kids, all her people would gather around each other, nourishing each other in circles of dance, quiet cries of songs, holding each other up. Economy and opportunity split up the village to a better life. And then the family diaspora led to us here alone, far away, cut off from smells and embraces, from the rest, the island. Here there are no shared songs or food or dance, no hands to hold, no faces to see, just four bare walls. I lift her frail body in my arms and call to mainland neighbors and friends. They tell me that we do not pray hard enough. We must ask God for help as they send Facebook thoughts and prayers. But that rug was ripped out from underneath me when they amputated Mom's leg without anesthesia, asking family to volunteer to hold down her shoulders since they were understaffed. It is a revolt and a blur and a helplessness all rolled into one. A resentment of a loving God who would let someone who had been so giving, so long sacrificing in her life, spend her last several months in excruciating, untouchable pain. The day that I saw her on her hospital bed, still hurting, but with her left leg missing all the way up to her hip, shining staples haphazardly marking where her melting, long grass hula dancing leg had once been. That same day, there was a story on the news about a baby that was discovered, scarred and broken, under the rubble of a building. His entire family crushed and dead halfway around the globe. And the drone moved on. Mom, too, was gone. I lost my mind that night. I could hear the baby's cries nearby, his mouth stuffed with dust. I could hear the wails of forlorn families, nearby witnesses, unmentioned in our news, so loud as flying, harming robots whirred away. I could no longer find my own name, could not eat, could not respond. I see all around what is not there, dust and destruction. What was me dissolved, salt in the waves that pulled me under. I am barely here. How can I lift away the crumbled walls my country brought down, caved in, unbury the lives that loved, whistled, sang, fed, laughed, arms supporting each other, brush off the dirt and the dust. Forget these useless thoughts and prayers that go unheard. My childhood prayers had been so magical and immediate, but now they are silent, strangled, rent, bitter, caught in my throat. How can we unite what good is in the world? The human hands lifting up the tribe when one among us is drooping or fallen. I hear the voices all around of those who lost their homes, their families, their legs, their minds. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. Thank you very much indeed. Again, a very moving poem. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. We will move on to our next poet, and this is another one of those wonderful Agnes Scott alumnus, Hani Zweibel, originally from Elizabeth, a small town in rural Western Pennsylvania. She now lives and writes just outside of Atlanta in Smyrna, Georgia. She graduated from Agnes Scott in 2011 and is currently pursuing an MLIS at Valdosta State University. She is the author of Cave Dreams to Star Portals in Cash Registers, and Cash Registers to Cave Dreams. She has been published in numerous magazines and journals online and in print. And I'm very warmly, I want to very warmly welcome Hani Zweibel to the reading. She has been with us before for this reading as well. So I'm so happy that you are participating again this year. Hani.
Thank you, Dr. Khwaja, and thank you to Agnes Scott for hosting this event and for having me. I also want to extend my condolences to the Agnes Scott community for the loss of your colleague. And I will go ahead and get started with these poems. Light under the door. What lovely thoughts the dinosaur has upon waking, to go into the garden and eat. If you give into the notion that notions have notions, memory, which is not memory, is something that the drops of leaves do not erase, and the peace that dwells there never leaves. You learn just how very long the light is under the door. Time crystals. The internet becomes the place where all the information available fails to educate anyone. It is the place where words become useless, and now only silence screams, sending out distress signals like a wounded plant, but all you smell is fresh cut grass. We think it's all linear, but that's the trap and the illusion of our perspective. We have danced around the wheel again, only to come to this place again. Scientists say they have created time crystals, but maybe we learned to do this long ago and forgot, and that's why we have deja vu. Talk to me about it again. They have tried to kill us many times, and still we sing of travail and the intricacy of the DNA that prevails. What dreams visit in slumber are messages of hope. Hold them close. Those are our footprints in the snow, going around the mountain as they have for millennia. Look up at the sky, search this whole universe for intelligent conversation, and all you'll find is a garden tool left out to rust. And just one more. Stillness. In the stillness, we find more stillness. Ocean waves unfold on the sand, carrying small crustaceans and mermaids' purses. What lives inside the strange pods borne upon the tide? Stillness. In the stillness, we find more stillness. Winds sweeping the scuttling claws of scorpions and tumbleweeds. What lives inside the night blooming flowers of cactus? Stillness. In the stillness, we find more stillness. Forest fires burning hot enough for pines to release their cones, shedding bark. What lives inside the seeds born upon the flame? Stillness. In the stillness, we find more stillness. Lava flowing from the volcano mouth, melting rock and covering cars. What lives inside the magma cooling when it kisses the sea? Stillness. In the stillness, we find more stillness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mani. And again, wonderful contributions to this reading. Appreciate it a whole lot. Our next speaker, as listed, is Lali Sipi Michaeli. Is Lali there? I didn't see her. Lali, are you there? No, I don't think she has joined us. So I think we'll have to skip this poet and move on to somebody closer to home, Mariam Khwaja, who happens to be my partner, homemaker, teacher, friend, and lover of nature. As she describes herself, loves to read, listen to music, watch movies, and travel. Family time is what she enjoys most, though, and time with her grandkids as their nano and dado, which means grandmother from the female side and the male side. So Mariam Khwaja, please take the stage. I am glad you are here to join us and be a part of this event. Welcome. Unmute yourself, please. Sorry, I should have said this before. There's a button on your left-hand side. Click on it. Okay, there you are.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be part of this wonderful group of poets, and it made me very special as if I am one of them. But I usually enjoy all the poetry, but especially one which is about nature. So today I have chosen a poem which is Song of the Flower, and it is by Khalil Gibran. It's a beautiful poem. I am a kind word uttered and repeated. By the voice of nature, I am a star fallen from the blue tent upon the green carpet. I am the daughter of the elements with whom winter conceived. To whom spring gave birth, I was reared in the lap of summer and I slept in the bed of autumn. At dawn, I unite with the breeze to announce the coming of light. At eventide, I join the birds in bidding the light farewell. The plains are decorated with my beautiful colors and the air is scented with my fragrance. As I embrace slumber, the eyes of night watch over me. And as I awaken, I stare at the sun, which is the only eye of the day. I drink dew for wine and hearken to the voices of the birds and dance to the rhythmic swaying of the grass. I am the lover's gift. I am the wedding wreath. I am the memory of a moment of happiness. I am the last gift of the living to the dead. I am a part of joy and part of sorrow. But I look up high to see only the light. and never look down to see my shadow. This is wisdom which man must learn. Thank you.
And so must woman. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your
Okay.
contribution to this
Thank you.
poetry reading.
Well, thank you for including me, and I
You
enjoyed
are
a
most
lot of
welcome.
points.
It's
Thanks.
always a delight to have you. Thank you. We move on now to our next reader. Carolyn Minter is a lover of the spoken word and a self-entitled poet who enjoys open mics, slams, and readings. She is the proud parent of Maya Minter, who's currently a junior majoring in business management and is delighted to be sharing this reading. You're welcome, Carolyn Minter. Please take the stage.
Absolutely. And I am so delighted. It has been wonderful to be here to hear all the poets all day. So I'm going to read a piece I wrote earlier this year. It's kind of a juxtaposition to Amanda Gorman's The Hill We Climb. So as I began to think about the capital itself, this is what unfolded. It's entitled The Hills We Are Climbing. 365 stairs of Capitol Hill. The time has come and we ask ourselves, where can we find the strength to begin this climb? 535 Capitol stairs sit in their chairs. We know that silence speaks volume when it becomes to the belief that what it's just is just is. The future is now, and we must seize the moment like never before, because we must merge majority and minority and make miracles so that our nation can finish the work that has not yet started. We, the inhabitants of this America, can find ourselves unafraid. No matter what our sex, religion, creed, or color, we will never fade. We have never been perfect because our past precedes us. So we must press upward in this climb to stand in our purpose for a purpose, to commit our collective committees to convening on the composition of man's condition and come to a consensus since it's just us. So we must climb out of our stairs and chairs to help our fellow man to stand. Standing committees, standing together so we can stand together. For we know that what lies before us and behind us is not greater than what lies within us. So we come armed with every solution to every situation, ready to raise our arms in agreement. See, the harm is not in moving swiftly enough, for we are reminded around the globe that we are tough. So we stand unshaken and agree to shake hands, to get off our reins and make it rain, swing like those states and get America's pockets straight. They need checks so that they can balance their books. You know all about what grassroots looks like. We shall come forth as pure gold because we know defeat. It is what has kept us in our seats. We must now stay seated. We must not stay seated in the past, but make things come to pass. We must sew the fabric of us together. See, scripture employs us not to be only our brother's keeper, to bear one another's burdens, but to be a blessing to the highest degree. We must blend our branches and smoothly agree. Our tongues have the power of life and death, so don't keep score. So be mindful of the assault weapons that fly across the floor. Be kind and do more. When we live this and we show up every day, consciously committed to the constituents of our cultures and communities that has garnered our confidence, see, we must learn to cancel out the catastrophes that have conveniently covered our country for centuries. This is where we must consciously continue to climb so that we will never again lag behind. Being an American is an honor to behold. We must act now so the next generation can unfold. We ask not what our country has done for us, but what we must now do for our country. No one shall ever delay, destroy, or defeat us. They have never been deleted and no need to be repeated. See, a delay is not a defeat. Ultimately, the right man took his seat. This democracy does not cheat. All eyes have been on us, but in God we trust. For faith, hope, and love just is. So we ask you to call your joint session, make some confessions, answer those hard questions, then puff, pass legislation that will last. Write new rules. You have all the tools. Embark, earmark, not bark. Say goodbye to partisan and hello to unison. We must persevere, for this time is here. This one thing is clear. Just as the Sankofa bird looks back only to move forward, we belay without delay. To the top of the hill we pray. We pray for a place of peace where parties can pass peace and prosperity to all people. We do not look back, we look forward and hear sounds of unison, because we know our actions and agreements with the adulation are the adulations of our next generation. For the pages are turning into interns, which turn into God's most beautiful creation. Our success is their survival. And one thing is certain, when we merge the left wing with the right wing, then we rise together as one nation under God. So we give them new heights to reach and greater hills to climb. With every fiber of our being and every buzzer that we ring, we will be in harmony. In harmony, we will climb in the north, in the south, in the east, and the west. Not so that the world can see us, but that so that we may see the world. Every neighbor in this nation will rise, and every caucus, convention, corner, and crevice will creep into compromise, and every farm and reservation will restore order and preservation. When the time comes around again, we will show even greater strength and resolve, for it will be us all. So these three remain: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. And if we are brave enough to love, then we're brave enough to live as one love. The day is here. Now see it, seize it, believe it. Let's capitalize it. I yield to the next poet.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. This is very moving indeed, Carolyn Minter. Appreciate your contribution and your very wise words as well. Let's move on to the next poet. Megan Walpert is a poet or editor of over a dozen books on popular culture, including 2 Lambda Literary Award finalists and an American Library Association honoree. She won Georgia Author of the Year for her newest work, Boss Broad, Sibling Rivalry Press, 2019. Walpert is a part-time assistant professor of interdisciplinary studies at Kennesaw State University, has been teaching public high school English in Atlanta for almost 2 decades and was 2014 Teacher of the Year. She writes for Pop Matters and has edited anthologies of philosophical essays on the music of Tom Petty and the television series RuPaul's Drag Race. Megan Walpert, please take the stage, and a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you. Hello, old friends and new. I've been enjoying your words and also admiring your bookcases. I have 4 very short poems to read for you. The first are sort of old. They come from this book, Only Ride. We are not precious little boats. There are a half a dozen things that I associate with F-holes, and each of them is a god that you have never met. Everything is a time capsule in which we are born back ceaselessly, if ceaselessly actually means occasionally. No matter how steadily one keeps a hangover in the crosshairs, the mind is not a sieve. Memory is a shiv, happening pointedly, poignantly, like a house on fire. It doesn't matter how prepared you are to carry your possessions out safely. Ash is a part of the air. So the fearsome thing really is life. That's why we breathe deeply and live it, wiggling our loose teeth with our wagging tongues. Don't chase the white whale. Death is shoeless horse hooves. We are an engine turning over in winter, grasping for solutions. I don't know any Irish drinking songs, but my entire body can turn still with reckoning when I catch such a melody on the wind. It seems like every time the candle goes out, there are reasons to light a fresh one. I once almost puked during an IMAX movie about deep sea creatures, and not for the proportions of the picture. I couldn't stand the close-ups of their eyes. It's true that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, just not until it's done scaring the holy hell out of you. We see something terrible and bloom. Look at the sky so you know what the emergency is. Fires happen at night. Floods happen during the day. Every natural disaster wants to perform when it can be best seen. There is a special type of black mold that only grows where there has been a flood, and it's toxic. But there is also a mushroom, a black morel, which only grows where there has been a fire, and it is delicious. The event is not really the thing. It's just a seed. In museums, I spend probably 60% of the time looking at people looking, and just 40% of the time looking at what they're looking at. And I've got one more poem for you from this cool anthology I edited, which is called Closet Cases, Queers on What We Wear. And I will read you my contribution from it. It's a coffee table book, so all of the poems have pictures that go with them because it's about clothes and you need to see the clothes. So here's the picture that goes with what I'm about to read. Watchdog. Time is against us, is how most queers feel. We're always waiting for the other shoe. Even watching a polite, tidy sitcom like Will and Grace, I catch myself thinking, Jack's gonna get the shit beat out of him any day now, or AIDS, or jail, or homelessness. I have two openly queer friends who work in high schools like I do, and they both retired this year. The way we counted those days down, you'd think we were in NYC for NYE 1999. If you're queer and you finish out your career by natural means instead of getting fired, that is living the dream. The Timex Weekender is a cheap dial that makes a big sound, tick, tick, tick. All the time was coming hard for me, and I started running, worked faster, thought faster, stopped for no one, accomplishments as far as the eye could see. This $10 watch, it ran me. I couldn't stand it. I gave it away a few days after I put it on, by which time it had aged me several months. A lot of other things happened over many moons, and I survived them all. And the person I am now meditates about an hour a day, every day, tapping the ancestors. And you know what they say? Tick, tick, tick. How precious it is to finally respect a few of one's elders. How invigorating to have lasted one more minute in this queer body and this strange life. How brave to simply keep showing up, and how aggravating for the other bastards that one's accomplishments keep aggregating, also accumulating, are a diverse bunch of watch bands, because I ponied up another $10 to reclaim my Timex. The person I am now happily straps on this constant reminder to hold steady. And sometimes in a contentious meeting, my admin will sit back in his chair and I can almost see him calculating whether this is the hill I die on, and it never has been so far. And while he is thinking about it, in the hostile silence of the conference room, I am telegraphing him that queer agenda, which is tick, tick, tick.
I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. That was absolutely marvelous. Thank you so much. And this is your first time that you are a part of this event, and for that too, I'm very grateful, and I hope you will join us again next year. This is a wonderful contribution from you. We move on now to our next poet participant, again a dear friend who has been a participant in multiple iterations of this event. Lynn Farmer. Poetry has been featured at readings in Teaneck, New Jersey, and Philadelphia, as well as at Callenbold, Emory University, University of NGA, and elsewhere. She has won the Byron Reese Award and the Chattahoochee Valley Prize, as well as the Warren Prize from the Academy of American Poets. Her work has appeared in journals such as Red Mountain Rendezvous, Snake Nation Review, Poets, Artists, and Madmen. Lynn's collection, The Rare Persistent Light, winner of the Charles Dixon Chapbook Award, was published in 2012. Lynn has been a career high school teacher, and is also a photographer and singer. Lynn Farmer, most welcome. Please take the digital stage.
Thanks, Waqas. And I wanted to add my condolences to all those at Agnes Scott and the loss of your colleague, and also congratulate you about your recent International Poetry
Oh,
Award.
you.
So I followed those photographs and enjoyed it very much. It's nice to be here again. This first poem is entitled What You Didn't Hear, Believes in Early Spring. It always matters who will listen. You might have held your breath in time if you had heard the wondrous breaking forth of dusty blue engaging wings that gathered in and gifted back to all the heavens whole, rising free from every worldly care above the stillness of the glass-faced, plain and sounding deep. He glided to his waiting comfort of this other heartened self within the branching heights and gentled down in satisfaction by the morning's light. You might have stood in awe at early mass if you had heard the Latin blessing in the Spanish psalm and saw inside the small and sun-blanched walls. If you had tasted bitter wine through wafered lips and knelt within the song, beside the veiled and weathered supplicant who looked like grace. You might have smiled and bent to help if you had heard the tears torn from the bark black boy whose slender legs and elbows skinned in watered sand, who shed his hurt and solitude in cries that seemed to wash his face away, if you had held those fragile bones and cleaned embarrassed wounds. You might have laughed aloud for free if you had heard the bleating sheep that rose behind us there to stand and then defend the flock from our blunt intrusion there among them. It chased us to the brimming end where the rare tiger heron rose from the lagoon, a lazy lay between banana trees and lilies, floating just beneath the trace of fading moss. And there is more you might have heard if you'd had time. The whisper of black orchids, the tune of gallinule and finch and grebe, the call of alphabets and rhymes, the simmer of conch soup, the sizzling shrimp, the sighs of schoolgirls shy beside the trees. You might have hoped just hard enough if you had heard me singing way within the sky, the palms below and river far away, eyes seeing quite the edge of all the earth, beyond the cloudless climb through time that stretched the shadows of my soul. There was enough to hear that any time was worth in all its simple glory and all its wandering loss. And I am listening still to the beating of those hearts as close as breath, to the sighing of those dreams as dear as life. This other one was written after a New York City trip. I think I wrote 13 before I had to stop for another engagement. But this was one of them. All of them true to life. And the title is 100 Faces. Felix Morello is drawing 100 faces in chalk, moving south 10 at a time down the sidewalk in Union Square. He's on number 86. He's silently, deliberately making his own path amid metallic oils of city sights stretched along the wall. Beside the tambourined Hare Krishna swathed in dusty brights, who stopped surrounding jaw-dropped crowds with dances for loose change. Just in front of determined chess games in awkward rows set on colored milk crates near the stairs. Above it all, George Washington stretches forth a bronze arm, calling attention to a cause in Chinese characters. It's Sunday, and every fragile face is marvelously different. Thanks so much.
Thank you so very much, Lynn. Again, beautiful, beautiful poetry and lovely feeling. So thank you. Appreciate
Thank you.
your contribution. Move on now to a second Lynn, and this Lynn has not participated in our reading before. This is Lynn Carrigan, and I want to extend a very warm welcome to her for joining us for this session. She grew up in Decatur on Derry Down Way, just off College Street during the 50s and 60s, coming of the civil rights era. Born in Seattle to parents from Ohio and Washington, she was an outsider in Georgia, disturbed by its flagrant racism and determined to understand. She pursued a journalism degree at UGA and later, when understanding wasn't enough, a master's in social work from the University of Washington. In the Pacific Northwest, Lynn made a career in mental health, trauma, social action, and education. Retired now, she plays guitar and sings in an all-old women band, volunteers for the Public Health Medical Reserve Corps COVID mission, and serves as a radio talk show host and commentator on Voice of Vashon. Always, she has written newspaper articles, poetry, short stories, song lyrics, book chapters, research studies, newsletters, bits of memoirs, letters to the editor, and so on. She first published poetry. Her first published poetry was in 1993 in We Speak for Peace, an anthology edited by Ruth Harriet Jacobs, a Wellesley professor concerned about Bush I's first Gulf War. She's honored to be in, she says, our company here, joining her voices to the voices of the poets who have already read. Lynn Farmer, a very, very warm welcome to you. Please
Thank
take
you.
the stage.
But I'm Lynn Carrigan. Lynn Farmer was just before me.
Lynn Carrigan, sorry, Lynn Carrigan. My
okay.
apologies to you,
That's
and a
all
huge apology is needed there. Lynn Carrigan, please.
Thank you. I am so grateful to be here and so buoyed by hearing all of your poetry. It's been astounding and amazing. And I have also Franklin Abbott, who's been a friend of mine since graduate school, to thank for inviting me here. I also want to add my condolences to the loss of your colleague and to comment on the amazing seeds of hers that are flourishing in your graduates. It's amazing. I'm going to read 2 short poems from my upcoming chapbook, Rude Poems for Rude Times. The first I call Dark Matter, a double sonnet. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
okay.
Loud and clear.
Good. Physicists say there is a hidden force in the universe that permeates space and even travels through our dense bodies. They know it is there, but not what it is. I know what it is. And so does everyone who has ever been hurt, left bleeding or furious and vengeful or hopeless, desolate, tired and afraid and alone. It is every mean look that has ever been thrown at some real or imagined enemy. Every cry of despair still ripples, felt, echoing through each endless, endless night. It is the shiver of all refugees, the pain of each soldier trying again, the disbelief of every protester called traitor for calm and reasoned dissent. Dark matter is the shock resounding from every swindle, every cold betrayal, from all the broken hearts and shattered minds, reverberating in accordance with scientific laws. If all is both transient and permanent, waves and particles but shifting in time, metamorphosis transforming everything into new forms of shimmering brilliance, perhaps we should at least recognize the deep, eternal impact of our failures, measure it in human terms by people on their knees praying for a coming light.
Beautiful. That is most beautiful indeed.
Thank you. My second is called A Torrent of Slow Reckoning. Listen, all poetry is politics, and all good politics is poetry. A working, struggling democracy is poetry victorious, justice enshrined in state. When citizens' cries are finally heard, their words so strong they carry shame on their backs like stones to defeat giants. The voices of their poets become a river of song that cannot be dammed. The current of their truth rushes through arid land, a flash flood collecting and binding and changing a desert into a wellspring from which all can drink until the generations pass and forget how their ancestors suffered, and then it all begins again. Democracy is no object to own forever, to pass down to your children intact and pure. It is an ugly process of trying to discern how to govern our ever-changing selves for the good of all, for the country, not a party, not for a few, not a base of your fans, but for all of us, for now, if not for all time. Let it not be a sham, a front, a cover for capitalists wanting to substitute bottom line profits for broad and deep values that can steer our ship of state through the rocky shallows of our minds. Let it not be a bitter anarchy or unsolvable riddle or a widening chasm that will lead to the sinking of our hopes and dreams of peace that we all bring to this life. Let not democracy be chained by fools or special interests or demagogues or mob rule. Let it be that river of song that sings of rushing, moving possibility.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so
Thank
very
you.
much, Lynn Carrigan. Appreciate your participation and these wonderful two poems that you shared with us. We will now go to our chairperson of the English department, Nicole Stanley. She has been here. I've neglected to welcome her, and I hope she is going to overlook that because I was so engrossed in following the order of reading and introducing everyone that I somehow neglected that duty. But she, Nicole Stanley, chair of the Department of English, is author of serial memoir, Archiving American Lives, Palgrave 2014. She's associate professor at Agnes Scott College, where she specializes in life writing studies. She finds herself writing often about the intersections of life writing and gender, race, foodways, and graphic narrative. I must also thank her for the support she has always given to this program, this event every year. And I'm deeply grateful to her that she is now able to join us at the closing of this session. And she'll say a few words and also perhaps share a poem or two with us. Nicole, please, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Waqas, and thank you to all of you for your wonderful poems. It has been, as so many of you have pointed out, really a balm to listen to your words and to be reminded of the beauty of things and the anguish of things, and sometimes, you know, how those coincide. And I apologize if I cry. And I also wanted to, thank Dr. Khwaja for always spearheading this wonderful event. We feel as a campus community very lucky to have the privilege of hosting one of the 100,000 Poets for Change events. I'm especially thrilled to be able to join. For many years, I couldn't because my children have activities on Saturday mornings. And so while Zoom is not great for everyone, for people with small children, it actually can be kind of helpful sometimes. So, I do have a couple of poems. The first one is from Tina Chang. It's from her collection Hybrida, which was published in 2019. Tina Chang will be a writer in residence at Agnes Scott in the spring as part of our Writers Festival. This poem is called Patience. I come from gravel falling from the mouth, a bent spine from which my mother rose, from the sickness that poured over my father in water buckets. That was the well he fell into, and the well where I waded, a body cutting into water on impact. My face is the only heirloom fixed in gold. The features which swirl down a drain, I come from that too, not sewage nor explosion, but a phantom lock, a combination set to be opened, a slap in the dark, a gun goes off. I come from the story of chicken breeders, of nurses, of railroad, bone soup, chopping block, the work of chopping, then finally food. I come from handmade shirts hanging in my stepfather's closet. I come from the spit and curses that careened from his mouth like anvils and vespers, lamps unlit, medicine, tubes, worn flags, failing lungs making up an American song in each room of the house. I come from stickball bat and missing bases, empty trailer in the lot across the street, light that flickered on and off, signaling one lone presence. I come from the broad birds and the day demons, the ash from a childhood burn, tin cans of dried pens, newspaper, seashells, a phoenix ficked in a souvenir bottle. Every bit saved as if discard were memory itself, as if I lived on paper, a breeze. I come from a wayward bicycle, departure through a heavy door, a forklift, a lion's claw, a den of starving wolves. I am frantic, running through the house, closing shutters, hiding silverware. I am found in my bed, breathing. I come from a dead end that opened toward the brick face of a horizon which glowed like God's goat face, a wild compassion, a guttural sound from the throat. I come from the last funeral, my stepfather in a casket with all the living flowers, his hands sewn together in death, though I remember in life they raged, punctuating each hungry vowel. How the orchids overwhelmed his body, his poisonous face of my past. I come from that too, from the indifference of doors and keys, from the sonnet of the sewing machine, which wrestled my neck at the collar, and all my words, caught at the throat, struggled to make one stitch, a straight line. I come from those birds, heron, robin, grackle, the ones you cannot catch, the ones that sound like owls or witches. I come from the rough seas of this sort of battle, of consequences all too familiar and fantastic. I gulp the world's water, salt with rage, froth with effort. I come from that, the flailing struggle, my afterlife waiting for me, and a future summoning at my ankles. The future is an animal waiting to pounce. It is that bestial, that patient. I come from that too. And the other poem that I wanted to read is from our dearly beloved Camila Aisha Moon. It's the final poem in her collection Starshine and Clay, and you'll see it's perfect. It's called Catskill Retreat. On a mountain all moon glow, toad moan and green majesty, I've come, since it wouldn't come to me, to make peace at the foot of heaven, haul it home somehow. The steepness of my soul overwhelms, housed in this bear of a body. Prophets prove that mountains midwife great reckoning, the heart's read psalms in concert with the hummingbirds whirring. Thoughts linger a while, embraced by the naked mind. God-flecked cypress and pine, I can't stand tall with you, knees too burdened to hike trails and to dash meadows. I am fat with failure and promise, a pile of damp timber just before sunrise. I take cool, high altitude breaths and recall other heights, gaze at humbling shoulders of earth, brushing up against brazen blue, channel a lily pad lightness upon woman-made depths to face matters long past skimming. As fingers press prayers into crumbling quartz, bless my fellow travelers and the blades of grass forgiving our steps, springing back up. Bless the beaver beginning again and again, the monarch's meandering flight. Bless these mosquitoes in their insatiable thirst, the blue jays at dawn trilling. You are not through.
Thank you again. Thank you very much, Nicole. And with that, we come to the conclusion of our reading session. I will thank all the poets who participated, all of you who've stayed on for the entire event. I really greatly appreciate that you so generously give of your time for this event and share your poems here, obviously, with all of us and with the world at large. There were many contributors today from other parts of the world, and I'm glad that this is becoming more and more a global event as well. I do not want to add an additional poem here to what has already been read, and I would very much like to have this ending with Aisha's poem. But I am intrigued by Lynn Carrigan's poem called Dark Matter, because uncannily, I too have a poem called Dark Matter. And to me too, it means something. And I feel like it may be appropriate for the moment. It's a short poem, so I'll go ahead and share that poem to conclude this session and this event for today. So the poem is called Dark Matter. That which binds, puckers and crimps and twines, invisible itself, a wisp without substance, a flicker without a gleam. Something there is that bends light, clusters flocks of cloud, ornaments skies with their offspring, sets a juggler's days and nights in motion. Rope, strand, and filament, pollen and spore, a cornfield's pearls and tassels, an air of wheat's granary of gold, a quaking aspen's roots and ichor. Ancient ghost dust, burgeoning and blooming in the whale's playground. Slipping through rock citadels, spinning and spiraling in tropical troughs, sparking a struck matchstick. Phantom motes and particles, whimsical as water, treacherous as painted ships, bridging seas of painterly space, with flaming viaducts of mirrors and ice. Droopy, melting clocks, a squadron of pious ants droning over its banquet of time. A ram's skull, its antlers spread like wings, flying past a floating white hollyhock. Om and Omega, Tao of all that exists. No thing in everything, nowhere in everywhere. The absent one, always present. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll come to the close of our session. Thank you. Okay.